2 Chronicles Chapter 30. And Hezekiah sent word to all Israel and Judah and also wrote letters to Ephraim and Manasseh telling them to come to the house of Jehovah in Jerusalem to hold the Passover to Jehovah the God of Israel. For the king and his officers and all the congregation in Jerusalem had taken counsel to hold the Passover in the 2nd month. Because they could not hold it at that time, for the priests had not sanctified themselves in sufficient number nor had the people gathered to Jerusalem. And the matter seemed right in the sight of the king and in the sight of all the congregation. So they established a decree to send a proclamation throughout all Israel, from Beer-sheba to Dan, telling them to come to hold the Passover to Jehovah the God of Israel in Jerusalem, for they had not held it for a long time, as it was decreed in writing. And as the king had commanded, the runners went with the letters from the hand of the king and his officers throughout all Israel and Judah, saying, You children of Israel, return to Jehovah, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, and he will return to the remnant of you who have escaped from the hand of the kings of Assyria. And do not be like your fathers and like your brothers, who trespassed against Jehovah, the God of their fathers, so that he made them a desolation, as you now see. Do not now be stiff-necked, as your fathers were, yield to Jehovah, and come to his sanctuary, which he has sanctified forever, and serve Jehovah your God, that his burning anger may turn away from you. For when you turn to Jehovah, your brothers and your children will find compassion before those who led them captive and will return to this land, for Jehovah your God is gracious and compassionate, and will not turn his face away from you if you return to him. So the runners passed from city to city in the land of Ephraim and Manasseh and as far as Zebulun, but they laughed them to scorn and mocked them. Nevertheless some men from Asher and Manasseh and Zebulun humbled themselves and came to Jerusalem. Moreover the hand of God was on Judah, giving them one heart to perform the commandment of the king and the officers by the word of Jehovah. And many people gathered at Jerusalem to hold the feast of unleavened bread in the 2nd month, a very great congregation. And they rose up and removed the altars that were in Jerusalem, and they removed all the incense altars and threw them into the brook Kidron. Then they slaughtered the Passover sacrifice on the 14th day of the 2nd month. And the priests and the Levites were ashamed, and they sanctified themselves and brought burnt offerings to the house of Jehovah. And they stood at their station after their custom, according to the law of Moses, the man of God. The priests sprinkled the blood that they received from the hand of the Levites. For there were many in the congregation who had not sanctified themselves, therefore the Levites were charged with slaughtering the Passover sacrifices for everyone who was not clean, to sanctify them to Jehovah. For a great number of the people, many from Ephraim and Manasseh and Issachar and Zebulun, had not cleansed themselves, yet they ate the Passover otherwise than as prescribed, for Hezekiah prayed for them, saying, May Jehovah the good expiate for everyone who has prepared his heart to seek after God, after Jehovah, the God of his fathers, even though he is not according to the rules of purification for the sanctuary. And Jehovah heard Hezekiah and healed the people. And the children of Israel who were found at Jerusalem held the feast of unleavened bread for 7 days with great rejoicing, and the Levites and the priests praised Jehovah day by day, with loud instruments played to Jehovah. And Hezekiah spoke encouragingly to all the Levites who showed themselves well skilled in their service to Jehovah, and so they ate the food of the appointed feast for 7 days, sacrificing sacrifices of peace offerings and extolling Jehovah, the God of their fathers. And the whole congregation took counsel to hold the feast another 7 days, and they held the feast those 7 days with rejoicing. For Hezekiah the king of Judah contributed 1,000 bulls and 7,000 sheep to the congregation, and the leaders contributed 1,000 bulls and 10,000 sheep to the congregation, and a great number of priests sanctified themselves. And all the congregation of Judah with the priests and the Levites and all the congregation who came from Israel and the sojourners who came from the land of Israel and dwelt in Judah rejoiced. And there was great rejoicing in Jerusalem, for since the days of Solomon the son of David, the king of Israel, there had not been the like in Jerusalem. Then the Levitical priests rose up and blessed the people, and their voice was heard and their prayer went up to his sanctuary, to heaven. 2 Chronicles Chapter 31. And when all this was finished, all Israel who were found in the cities of Judah went out and broke down the pillars and hewed down the Asherahs and pulled down the high places and the altars out of all Judah and Benjamin and in Ephraim and Manasseh until they destroyed them all. And all the children of Israel returned to their cities, each man to his own possessions. And Hezekiah appointed the divisions of the priests and the Levites by their divisions, each of the priests and the Levites according to his service, for the burnt offering and for the peace offerings, to minister and give thanks and praise in the gates of the temple of Jehovah. Also he appointed the king's portion of his substance for the burnt offerings, the morning and evening burnt offerings and the burnt offerings of the Sabbaths and the new moon and the appointed feasts, as written in the law of Jehovah. And he commanded the people who dwelt in Jerusalem to give the portion for the priests and the Levites, that they might devote themselves to the law of Jehovah. And when the commandment went out, the children of Israel gave in abundance the firstfruits of the grain and of the new wine and of the fresh oil and of the honey and of all the produce of the field, and they brought the tithe of everything in abundance. And the children of Israel and Judah who dwelt in the cities of Judah also brought the tithe of the herd and of the flock and the tithe of the dedicated things, which had been dedicated to Jehovah their God, and laid them heap upon heap. In the 3rd month they began to lay the foundation of the heaps, and in the 7th month they finished. And when Hezekiah and the leaders came and saw the heaps, they blessed Jehovah and his people Israel. And Hezekiah inquired of the priests and the Levites concerning the heaps. And Azariah the chief priest, of the house of Zadok, spoke to him and said, Since the time that the people began to bring the contributions into the house of Jehovah, there has been eating in satisfaction and an abundance left over, for Jehovah has blessed his people and this great amount is left over. Then Hezekiah gave orders to prepare store chambers in the house of Jehovah, and they prepared them. And they brought in the contribution and the tithe and dedicated things faithfully. And Conaniah the Levite was ruler over them, and Shimei his brother was second. And Jehiel and Azaziah and Nahath and Asahel and Jeremoth and Jozabad and Eliel and Ismachiah and Mahath and Benaiah were overseers under Conaniah and Shimei his brother by appointment of Hezekiah the king and Azariah the ruler of the house of God. And Korah the son of Imnah the Levite, the gatekeeper on the east, was over the freewill offerings of God, to distribute the contributions of Jehovah and the most holy things. And under him were Eden and Miniamin and Jeshua and Shemaiah, Amariah, and Shechaniah, serving faithfully in the cities of the priests, to distribute the portion to their brothers by divisions, great and small alike. Except for those who were enrolled by genealogy, males from 3 years old and upward, all who went to the house of Jehovah for their day-to-day duties, for their service in their offices by their divisions. Now concerning the enrollment of the priests by genealogy, it was by their fathers' houses, and that of the Levites of those 20 years old and upward was by their offices in their divisions. And the enrollment by genealogy included all their little ones, their wives, and their sons and daughters, the whole congregation of them, for they sanctified themselves faithfully in holiness. And for the sons of Aaron the priests, who were in the pasture lands of their cities, in each and every city, there were men who were mentioned by name, to distribute portions to all the males among the priests and to all who were enrolled by genealogy among the Levites. And Hezekiah did this throughout all Judah, and he did what was good and upright and faithful before Jehovah his God. And in every work that he began in service to the house of God and in accordance with the law and the commandment, to seek after his God, he did it with all his heart and prospered.